Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. It's been quite a while since I posted a video, so I might be a little bit rusty at this whole talking to the camera thing, but I'm gonna give it a shot. So in the last video, we actually had just got back from Lake Havasu, and that is the video where I'd actually crashed the truck. You know, we tore the whole front end of the truck up, the bed sides, got the cab pretty good. One door wouldn't open, so yeah, it was quite a mess fest there after we got done with that show. However, once I got back here to the shop, I had a whole list of shows to do after that. So I had to focus on just getting the truck together the best we could to make those shows. Now, this particular video, I'm pretty much just going to mash up all of the video footage that I got from the shows following Havasu. I really didn't get a lot of footage. Some of those shows I was running solo by myself, and then other ones I just didn't think about. You know, I still have a problem with remembering to turn the GoPro on in the truck. So what I'm going to do is just kind of throw all of the footage I have in order in the shows that we performed at, and I'll label those so you guys can know what shows the footage is actually from. But I'm just going to recap pretty much the last 2 months right here in the beginning of this video. Okay, so the list of shows following Havasu include Tremonton, Utah, and then Idaho Falls. After Idaho Falls was Haley, Idaho, and then Bluffdale, Utah. So following Lake Havasu, I had to do some maintenance to the truck. Obviously, I had damaged 90% of the bodywork on the truck. I had a broken axle shaft on the right rear, and then my wheel bearing, the spindle nut on the left front, was a little bit loose. So I went through, I made those repairs. I changed the axle shaft for the rear, tightened up the spindle bearing up front. I had 2 brand new front fenders upstairs in the other side of the shop here. So I got those cut, bolted on the truck, patched the hood up the best that I could, but the bed sides themselves were a loss. So they actually just went in the scrap pile out back here, and we decided to run that first show at Tremonton without any bed sides on it. Another small issue that I had after Havasu was actually a little bit of trouble with the transmission going into reverse, which I'm getting to figure out that a tiny bit of material in there, it sticks that spool. It's really not a big deal, but as short a time as I had from, you know, Havasu was one weekend, and then Tremonton was directly the weekend after that. So what I did was I took my spare transmission, swapped it into the truck with the brand new torque converter that I just got that all bolted in, patched up the front end. We hit the road. Allison and I went ahead and went to Tremonton, just her and I, for the first night. Tremonton itself was not a bad show, but it wasn't a great show. I mean, we completed it, but I unloaded the truck and found that I had a broken steering bolt on a rear steer cylinder. It would be the passenger side rear. So I spent most of the day Friday actually repairing that bolt. The way that it broke off and kind of twisted the tab on the knuckle, it's kind of an issue. So I had quite a bit of time in getting that all put back together. Once I got that repair made, then of course we got the truck out for pit party, set it up, visited with some fans, then we just got right into the show. Nothing really too special on that first night. I didn't really do anything great, especially in racing. The guys pretty much cleaned my clock out there on the track, and I was kind of a little bit baffled as to how come I was so slow. And then when I started watching the videos, and this is actually after the Tremonton show altogether, so I didn't catch it on night one. It wasn't until actually I got home. But you guys will see on the video that I'm lining up on the starting line like probably 30 or 40 feet back from that starting line. I don't know what I was doing there other than I didn't know exactly where the starting line was. And with the truck, the way it's got the firewall and everything in it, it's not like you can look through the floorboards and get lined right up with a cone or a chalk line or anything like that. So normally what I will do is locate that starting line or the cone or whatever they're using, and then kind of almost just guesstimate where I'm rolling up to it. And I'm usually pretty close. If I'm a foot or 2 back from the starting line, I'm fine with that. But Tremonton, I just didn't know where it was at. I didn't really put any thought into it. I just lined up in a spot that's like, this'll do. After the fact, I watched the video, and you guys will see it too. I'm quite a ways back. Also, nothing too special. Kept it pretty calm in freestyle, mostly so I didn't have to work on the truck a whole bunch on Saturday to be ready for that show. Now, Saturday itself, went into racing, same thing, went out immediately in racing because I lined up so far back from the starting line. And then we had quite an adventure in freestyle. So what happened in freestyle, I come out into intros, or, basically they called me out, come ripping out in freestyle. hard on the throttle in front of the stands, and I noticed when I let off the throttle that it didn't idle down like it was supposed to. And I was, I'm trying to drive, trying to think. The problem with me is once I start having any kind of an issue when I'm out on the floor, my brain goes to troubleshooting rather than just driving. So I'm trying to troubleshoot, how come is the engine revving up? Am I leaning out? Do I have a mechanical problem holding the throttle open? And I'm basically riding the brakes, trying to play with the throttle a little bit, try and do something on the floor for the entertainment for the fans. And I made about 3/4 of a loop around the arena itself before I noticed that the idle was getting higher and higher and higher. Every time I step on the throttle or do anything with the throttle, the RPM was raising. Now, about a half a lap around, 3/4 of a lap around, the brake fade is getting really bad. And I just decided I have to shut the truck down. So I don't want to just go in and hit kill switches and everything with it part throttle. You can load up the engine with fuel with the mechanical injection. So I'm trying to do kind of a balance of get the transmission into neutral, shut off the fuel, and hit the kill switch. Well, by the time I get that done, 3/4 way across the arena floor at a decent clip, not extremely fast, but it's a little bit, it's cruising right along. Well, I get it shut down, and the brakes are so hot and so faded that I barely get it stopped before the fence. I get out of the truck and look immediately. That way I can find out, do they need to tow me off the track, or is it something just stuck in a birdie or a throttle cable or something going on? So I can fire the truck up and actually get it off the track. Well, it turns out what had happened, somehow one of the jam nuts on the throttle adjustment screw had vibrated loose, and it had vibrated up that throttle stop screw. And every time I would step on the throttle stop screw would actually thread in, holding the birdies wider and wider open. Now, it wasn't like it moved a bunch. It was probably less than a full turn, I think. But a full turn opens those birdies a little bit, and it does not take very much air in this engine to make it start picking up RPM relatively quickly. So I simply pulled the throttle stop screw out, fired the truck up, limped it off the track, and pretty much called it a night. Now, had I stopped immediately once I found that, noticed that issue, I could have pulled that one throttle stop screw out. It has one on the other side, and I could have come back for freestyle later. So lesson learned on that. It was a pretty important one to get ironed out. I also found out later, once we got back from tree mountain, that somewhere in my jumbling of messing with the shifter and shutting everything down, I think I actually went from first to reverse at about 3,500 RPM. And the low reverse planetary in the C6 did not like that. That brand new transmission pretty much wasted that planetary. As a matter of fact, this is a 4-pinion planetary out of a C6. And this is the one that came out of that transmission. Now, this is just the planetary part. The ring gear portion itself looks even worse. It's pretty bad way to ruin basically a brand new C6. So needless to say, when we got back from Tree Mountain, I had a bunch of work to do again. This time I cleaned out the little spool that was a problem in the primary transmission. After getting the primary transmission back in the truck, I had just about enough time to check through a couple of things, bolt check everything, make sure that I didn't have any problems like that again. So now the jam nuts on the throttle stop screws are actually a 9-lock nut. So worst case scenario, the throttle adjustment screw can back out, closing the birdies, but nothing should be able to run back in. So that brings us to Idaho Falls. Idaho Falls, I did that show solo by myself. A friend of mine, Cheston Beck, ended up meeting me over there, and he was actually a lot of help, helping me get the truck prepped and everything ready to go. Had the new transmission, or I guess the primary transmission, new fluid, new converter, everything back in that one. And we went out there and actually had a pretty decent show at Idaho Falls. It was really a lot of fun. It was a great show. Ended up winning racing. I picked up what my problems were with Tree Mountain. So in Idaho Falls, I was getting on the starting line. I was getting right up in there. We ended up winning racing on the first night, Friday night. That was a pretty good boost of confidence for such a tough couple of weekends. Show 2 went pretty good. We did have a transmission problem again, and it was a freak deal. So between race qualifying and actual racing, I went out there and did my qualifying passes. After my second qualifying pass, I went to pull in the hot pits and then back into my stall. And Skyler, the promoter, was in there guiding me back. He was telling me to go back. And I noticed that I could not get the shifter to go forward in the truck. So I had no reverse, no neutral, no reverse, and no park. So the truck was stuck in forward gears. So again, I was given Skyler the signal through the windshield that I'm broke. Fortunately, the truck would move forward and there was nothing in the way. So I just pulled out and just drove immediately down to my trailer. Cheston and I got to work tearing the transmission apart. We just started draining fluid, pulled the pan. The sucky part with the pan is I have 12-point bolts that came with that particular oil pan. I did not have a single 12-point 5/16 socket. So both of us were in there with end wrenches, pulling all of those bolts out of the transmission pan. Got the pan dropped down and the park rod. So there's on the shift lever, there's a rod that goes to the back of the transmission. What it does when you put it in park, it goes through a guide, kind of a spring-loaded guide that applies the park pawl into the park gear. Well, what had happened was this much, probably 3/8 of an inch of the tip of the park rod had just snapped off. And this isn't the same transmission that I just, monkeyed around with in Tremont. Nothing bad has happened to this transmission. So why the tip of that broke off, I really don't know. But what happened was with that much shorter rod, when I come into third gear, it let it drop out of that guide. So then when I was trying to go forward, it was trying to, kind of jam itself down to the bottom corner of the case of the transmission. So I was stuck with basically first, second, and third. What we ended up doing was I just pulled the park rod out altogether. There was a sear clip on there, a little E-clip piece. Popped that off, pulled the rod out, crammed the transmission pan back in. By then, Dave Tucker with the T-Max and Next Level truck. He was there for intermission, so he came down and helped me me and Cheston both as much as he could. So the three of us got the transmission all buttoned up, got fluid pumped into the transmission, got everything ready to go. And we were actually able to make it back for racing. Unfortunately, I did not do that well. Obviously, my mind was a little bit preoccupied, but I was able to get in there, make a showing, make a couple passes, and the truck seemed to work pretty good. Later on, I did notice that I had forgot to hook up the vent tube on the transmission. So when I fill the transmission up, I actually unhook the vent tube off of the transmission because it goes into a catch can. If there's a little bit of oil in that catch can, it does not let oil flow in through the dipstick because the air is kind of creating a little bit of a little pressure in there. It takes a little bit of pressure to overcome that fluid in the overflow bottle. So if I unhook that hose, I can pour fluid in there nearly twice as fast. So we had been dumping oil in there. I forgot to hook that breather tube up. So in the freestyle videos at second night in Idaho Falls, you'll see a little bit of white smoke and stuff coming off the truck off of, when it come off of some, jumps a little bit weird, you'll see a puff of white smoke. That's actually the transmission fluid just kind of getting a little shot out the breather. It just splashes up, or, the drums or bells or something kind of wing it up there a certain direction. And just in the certain circumstances, we just got a little bit of transmission fluid out there and make a little smoke. Nothing to worry about. We did have a good time in freestyle that night. Kind of took advantage of the truck already being kind of beat up and hurting a little. So we just, kind of flogged on it a little bit that night. Had a lot of fun. I would definitely call Idaho Falls a success. It was a really good time. Now, Lake Havasu, Tremont, and Idaho Falls were all back to back to back. Those were all consecutive weekends. So after the Idaho Falls shows, I actually had a little bit of breathing room. Not a lot, but I was able to take the transmission apart again, replace the park rod in there. Checked a couple other things while I was in there. No real issues. Transmission seemed to be working good other than that small issue with the park rod. I had enough time to fix, it was the passenger side front fender again. Got that fixed. And then I also was able to get another set of bedsides cut and put on the truck. They're just steel bedsides. Currently, the truck has a new grill shell, new front fenders, and bedsides. Unfortunately, the fenders and the bedsides are not painted. I don't really care for that much, and I don't care for the cab being crinkled up the way it is. But I have stuff in the works to try and get this thing cleaned up and looking good again. But the next show was actually Hailey, Idaho, and that was a one-day show, Saturday. I was able to show up with the truck with all the body panels back on it. That's the first time I've done that in a while. And other than, just showing up and putting on a decent show, there was really nothing that special about Hailey. Hailey is a very small venue, one-night show. We just went out there and just put down some solid runs. I was able to drive the truck in the trailer and bring it home and really not have a lot of issues. And then the final show, which was actually in Bluffdale, Utah. That was a week after Hailey, so another back-to-back show. Fortunately, I didn't have a bunch of work to do after Hailey. Got down to Bluffdale. That was a 2-day show. Very big arena. So compared to what we've been running, it felt a lot bigger. Great jumps, great dirt. Had a lot of fun down there. Friday night, I actually got a pretty decent slap wheelie. So that was pretty cool. I mean, it's something I kind of been working on. Definitely need a ton more work to be, good at it. But it was a very unique feeling, to come off that jump, slap the front end in the air, stab the throttle, and just be looking at the sky for a second. It was a lot of fun. It was really cool. We ended up coming back around racing and did really good in racing. I ended up winning racing Friday night. I was just jiving with the truck. The truck felt good, run good. Dirt, like I said, the dirt felt great. The truck just drove really good. Friday night was definitely a success. I did have a little trouble in freestyle. So the freestyle actually went pretty good, but really towards the end of freestyle, I could feel a funny vibration, like some clunking going on. And I was actually pretty nervous that maybe I broke a ring and pinion or something was going on with the differential. What it actually had ended up being is the bolts on the bottom of the carrier bearing that hold it to a cross member, the nuts on the bottom of those bolts had fallen off. And it's just another thing that I'm learning what loosens up, when it loosens up. I've never had an issue with the carrier bearing nuts and bolts before. It's never been a problem. So I guess apparently now every 8th or 10th show, we have to make sure the carrier bearing's not falling out of the truck. Not a big deal, easy repair. Actually just had to get a shim back underneath the carrier bearing, put a couple nuts on it, make sure they were dirty tight. Everything was good. And then we went out for the Saturday show. Saturday show went pretty good. I didn't do anything particularly special. I tried a slap wheelie again, but it was pretty unsuccessful. We went out there for racing. The truck felt really good in race qualifying again. I really felt like I was going to probably win racing again. I was just jiving with the truck really good. Felt great. Lined up there for first round of racing, stabbed the throttle, made about 20 feet, and then just a horrendous crashing, banging. And I could tell, obviously, I was one end of the truck or the other was driving, more than likely the front end, just the way it was spinning the tires, but not with a lot of control. So they actually, the guy on course, seen what happened. He shut both trucks off. I was able to fire the truck back up and limp it off course. And what had actually happened was the 4 bolts in the flange on the back of the transfer case to the middle section of the driveline had just come apart. And I really think, looking back now, I think that when the nuts fell off the bottom of the carrier bearing, I think maybe those bolts in that coupler in the driveline were loose as well. And I just didn't see it. It's really stupid because I'm right there. You work on something on the driveline, you should check all of the driveline. And I just missed that. At first I thought maybe it broke the bolts, but I found a couple of the bolts and they were not broken. They were bent. You could see where they had kind of been rubbing in the bolt holes of the flange and the flange on the driveline. So obviously it was a loose fastener issue. Scrambled again this show. In between race qualifying, I did not make it back out for racing, obviously, which I went out the first round anyway. That's when it broke. I was able to, Cheston, again, was there helping me at this show. We were able to get the truck back together. It took out the driveline guard pretty bad, took out the 2 batteries pretty bad. And then obviously the driveline was pretty messed up where the 2 flanges mate was really rough. And the driveline had a pretty big dent in it from where it hit in the belly of the truck. But none of it was unsafe or unable to run as far as how I felt. We ended up getting the flange, bolted the 2 flanges, the one on the back of the transfer case, the one on the driveline, got those mated back up, everything bolted up, just dirty tight. Ended up throwing a couple of ratchet straps over the batteries, and the way we had the ratchet straps holding the batteries in, they were also there if something happened with the driveline. The driveline wouldn't be able to make it out of the chassis. It was pretty well trapped in there. So I went out there and just pretty much beat on the truck harder than I've ever beat on it so far. Nothing, nothing spectacular, but I definitely got more feel for the truck, how it was running, how the shocks were working and everything. And just went out there, put a couple minutes in, flogged on it, and I was again able to back the truck and the trailer. So I thought that was pretty successful. Here this last week, my last set of days off, I've been focusing on getting all the stuff in the belly of the truck fixed. Had to build new driveline guard. I machined the flange, made it flat again where the damage had happened from the bolts. I replaced the flange on the driveline, which the driveline I actually ended up completely retubing the driveline. So other than the end yokes, the driveline is all brand new stuff. Had to put new batteries in it. Wasted about $500 worth of batteries with that driveline flopping around in there. But it's got new batteries, and right now I'm actually getting ready to do some machine work to fix the battery hold downs because they kind of got messed up in that whole ordeal as well. So currently, right now, the truck is about an hour away from being mechanically ready to go to the next show. What I'm going to do, actually, I'm going to go ahead and plug those videos in now, show you what happened, just a little bit of footage I got. I'll bring it back after that and show you what I've got going on, to try and continue keeping up with this truck mechanically, and maybe a little bit later on in the year, get it spiffed up, cosmetically as well. Perfect. Well, here we are at Pit Party, huh? Show number 1, Friday night, Tremont in Utah. It's looks like a pretty wild track. We're gonna have a lot of fun tonight.
champion is going to be Kate Morrison, Dragon Slayer. Heavily improving the racing champion is going to be Leroy and Justin and Midnight Panic. Let's start it up and crown a champion. That is what I'm talking about, folks. The more noise you make, the harder they go. Let's hear it for Leroy Latham at midnight.
And now here's the truck back here in the shop. This is what I like to call the jack stand Lotus. This seems to be the truck's favorite meditating position while we're between shows. I put it up on the jack stand so I can work in the belly better. And I've been doing that a lot with the transmission, driveline work. So in here on the belly of the truck, you can see I got new battery, got this new guard for the transmission, new driveline parts. I had to machine this flange where it was all beat up. The carrier bearing, this is what I'm talking about. Let's see if I can get in here and show you guys. You see these nuts right here were gone, and that's what let the carrier bearing flop around. So what I've done actually here is I've taken a set of pair of nylock nuts and machined about 100 thousandths off the back of them so that the nylock part is actually gripping onto that bolt a bit better. And we're going to be watching all of this driveline stuff, we're going to be watching that very closely. Now, but this whole vibration and fastener loosening issue, I believe it is related. I think it's a driveline vibration. I've not really had time to focus on fixing this problem, but I think I have a solution in the works. I just have to wait for parts and actually wait for time. So what I'm going to do, just real quick, this is an SCS 18-inch box, and it's originally a 12.66 box that has this, like an adapter. It's not an adapter. It's just an addition that gives you that extra, nearly 6 inches. It's got another set of gears in it. But the way it's constructed, where that coupler is and where your outputs are, they're not really in line. It's like got a jog like this, right? So what it ends up doing is making my front driveline about 3 or 4 inches shorter. And I'm really working close to the limits of the U-joint as it is. So what I've got going on right now, I got a hold of SCS. I've ordered an 18-inch monster truck box. And what I'm going to do is build a new cross member, put the 18-inch monster truck box in here. And basically what that's going to do is move my output shafts about 3.5 to 4 inches farther back. Going to put it right in line with this right here. So by gaining a few inches on that front drive line, that's going to help as far as my operating angle a little bit. And then also it will shorten this middle drive line, which will have no effect on the truck. That'll just be a slightly shorter drive line in there. Now, as far as cosmetics, as you can see, I've got the black primered body parts on there, and I've wasted another fender. Those things are, there's a couple $100 even for the cheap China junk, which I'm not going to wreck good factory stuff. So we're just putting the cheap China junk on there. I do have another cab here in the shop. It's mostly sanded. I've got all the firewall cut out, the floor cut out. I've got a couple little rust repairs that I've got to make. A little bit of more Scotch-Brite work on the inside, and then it's going to get sealer paint, get it back in color to match the truck. I also ended up picking up a fiberglass front clip over in California, which it's more of a street truck front clip, so it's designed to be a tilt hood. I don't know if I'm going to use that or not, because Trey Myers got a hold of me the other day and he said that my fiberglass body is actually shipped. As a matter of fact, maybe by the end of next week or the week after that, I should actually have a complete fiberglass body for this truck here at the shop. If that's the case, what I'm going to do is use Trey's front clip with this cab and then the fiberglass bed sides. I'm going to take all of those parts and get them all painted at one time and then get them swapped on here. Now, my next show is Kennewick, Washington, and that's in a couple of weeks. So I don't have time to get the new body put on the truck. But what I will do is take this another brand new front fender that I already have cut. I'm going to get it bolted on the truck there so it can at least go to Kennewick looking mostly presentable. And then hopefully I will have my fiberglass body back from Trey Myers by then. Once we're done with the Kennewick show, I should have a month until my next show after that, which equates to a couple weeks worth of days off is all. But with a couple of weeks, I might be able to get the new fiberglass front clip, this cab, and the fiberglass bed sides painted and get them swapped over on the truck, which then I will go to Ogden, Utah. I believe that is August 6th or 7th, I think, for that show. And I would really like to show up to that one with this thing back looking presentable. So I think that brings you guys all up to speed with what's been going on the last couple of months. I know it's not great content. There's not really any good tech stuff in there. Maybe once I get to doing this body swap and the paint job, we can get some good shop content going on there. And then obviously I will try and get a little bit of footage from the Kennewick show as well. We'll just have to see how it works out. Maybe I'll just do a body swap, paint job, body swap, and splash in a little bit of show with that one. We'll see how it goes. As always, thanks you guys for watching. Have a good one.